Hello.
Hello, all. Um, Welcome to this fine Monday morning or afternoon, depending on what coast you're on. I'm really excited to be here listening to a really great panel of small, medium-sized firm representatives talking about their sustainability action plans. We'll give maybe about 30 to 45 seconds to let folks trickle in. But before we get started, want to do a couple housekeeping notes. This is a Zoom webinar, so we can't see your faces, but we would encourage you to pop into the chat and make sure you're toggled to everyone. A quick introduction, who you are, where you're coming from, region, firm name, and firm size. That will give our panelists a good indication on who's in the room and how best they can tailor any extra content or where we might see ourselves going during the Q&A. Speaking of the Q&A, if you do have any questions, so not separate from your introduction, but questions on the content along the way, please use that Q&A function at the very bottom, and that will be where our panelists will go first during the kind of last section of this presentation for any questions that they want to address from you all. If you are here right now, that means your attendance is recorded and you will be receiving that 1 LU and HSW credit. And so that should appear on your AI transcript within 8 to 10 business days. But if you don't see that there post 10 days, please give us a shout at 2030commitment@ai.org and we will get that all troubleshooted for you. Additionally, if you are not an AI member, you don't really care about the credits, but you do want a certificate of completion, give us a shout at that same email inbox, 2030commitment@ai.org, and we will get that populated for you within the next few days upon request. Right. My talking here is minimal, but wanted to give a quick introduction. My name's Ina Bakioki. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the AI Climate Action Pledge Programs Manager. So I work with Lindsay, who is on our 2030 working group, as well as our really wonderful member leaders, Amy and Jessica, on this panel. And I am really excited about this. As you all may know, earlier this year, we came out with a sustainability action plan refresh. And then that also included a materials action plan guidance document. And so this webinar series is really going through the different aspects of what those resources are showing you and how, most importantly, you can apply it to creating or revising your own SAPs. Right. With that, thank you for all these introductions. Looks like we have a really great crew. I will turn it over to our panelists.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'll just flip us forward to our, we're going to introduce ourselves. I'll take us to our agenda. This is our required learning objectives, what we're going to go over today. And we'll you can see them on the screen. Today, we're going to highlight takeaways from the AIA resource, Creating a Sustainability Action Plan. And then we're going to hear SAP case studies from Jessica Goswick, of Architects Fora, and me, Amy Loxcoco from Studio DSK, and Lindsay Love of Regenerative Building Solutions, who will address common barriers. And then we are going to have time for questions from all of you. And it's terrific that we're seeing in the chat, we have all different size firms here, from solo practitioners to firm of 30, and from Hawaii to Grand Rapids. This is really exciting. So I will move this along to our next slide.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay Love. I am an architect in Driggs, Idaho, a tiny little town, kind of a bedroom community to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I co-founded Love Shack with Lindsay Shack about 10 years ago. I've since started Regenerative Building Solutions to operate as a subcontractor and install particular materials I want to work with, but also to have more freedom to consult with other architects and owners on implementing biogenic insulations and mineral finishes into high performance envelopes. I help architects with specific projects, but also with creating sustainability action plans and generally just breaking the barriers to implementing sustainable strategies. And I'll pass it off back to Amy.
My name's Amy Sheehan Latsvakoko. I'm a director at Studio DSK in Concord, Massachusetts. I champion our sustainability efforts and our Caribbean work. I'm an architect registered in Massachusetts and California. I'm a certified passive house designer and a lead professional, lead BDNC, building design and construction. And I'm excited to talk to you today about creating an SAP and how we're using ours.
Thanks, Amy. Hey everyone, my name is Jessica Goswick. I'm the Building Performance Lead at Architects Fora, and I'm based in San Luis Obispo, but Architects Fora is a small 10-person, 100% women-owned, fully remote architecture and community design firm. So we have folks all over the country, and we are focused on housing justice and healing through design. All right, I'm going to walk us through the AIA resource on creating a sustainability action plan that works and then pass it over to Lindsay. So what is a sustainability action plan? That's what we're going to talk about most of today, and you're going to hear us refer to it as either a sustainability action plan or an SAP, SAP. And the AIA says a sustainability action plan is an actionable climate strategy that gives us a set of standards and goals for reaching net zero emissions in the built environment. You can think about this as like a roadmap for how your firm is going to reach your goals in sustainability, whether that's related to the AIA 2030 commitment for energy and carbon reductions, to water reductions, and healthy materials. So developing a SAP as a firm is multi-purpose because it breaks down this big task of all of these big sustainability goals and makes them feasible and actionable. It makes sure that you're checking in with what you're already doing as a firm and standardizing it, and it prioritizes what's most important to everyone so that you're all working towards a common goal. This is the resource that the AIA created to help firms create a sustainability action plan, and it's the resource that our firm built our SAP off of. And Lindsay's going to talk a little bit more about it.
So it's a really good, pretty robust document that overviews the key principles for effective change management, which is kind of critical and a foundation for a successful sustainability action plan. Not always, it's not critical, or I should say, it's not inherent that a firm needs to go through this substantial change, but I have learned, and we've all learned here, that there are cultural shifts, at least, that you can make that will help you have more success. In this document, there are a lot of excerpts from and examples of SAPs that other firms have developed, which is super helpful. Resources for setting goals and aligning with like other programs and integrating with other programs. Want to mention the AIA Framework for Design Excellence. That is the foundation of all of this. And there's a couple of new components that we integrated just this past year. The first one is a 2-pager that I'll go through a little bit more detail than the next slide. And then creating a materials action plan that's a little more in-depth and specific to healthier materials for reducing pollution, improving human health, and equity. All right, the 2-pager, AIA really has realized, especially through working with the 2030 working group, that there was a pretty big gap in our data from small firms. And so AIA has acknowledged that in order to make it easier for small firms to embrace reporting data, and I think there's probably another webinar that's going to go specifically into the DDX and reporting that data. We need to address first some of these foundations. SAP small firms have different challenges than larger firms and even mid-sized firms to implementing some of these strategies and goals. And so this 2-pager, hopefully the goal is to make it a little more accessible for a small firm to understand that it doesn't need to be as overwhelming as it sometimes can seem. It can be more bite-sized. For effectiveness, it needs to be a market and firm appropriate cultural and value strategy. You need to acknowledge your specific opportunities and leverage those within your market. It's, it's basic goal setting and evaluation process. It's really not a new type of strategy. And it's just kind of curtailing or customizing it for the goals that we have within the framework for design excellence. And then for small firms, especially choosing the low-hanging, most impactful fruit, because we are in a bit of a time crunch in terms of climate change. All right, next slide, please. So just to go a little bit into depth on this and give you some real examples, some short-term goals that a small firm, at least in my market, might consider implementing would be integrating sustainability language into your proposals and contracts. And when I say sustainability, especially in my market, we need to take it out of the polarization realm. So we're going to be using probably different words like health and performance, and but putting it into your messaging and into your contracts. So when a client signs up, and really it would be in your initial conversation with your potential client, expressing those values straight away. And that's pretty easy task to take on. And then the next one would be testing 1 to 2 software products or consultants. You as an architecture firm do not have to do all of the work. You can hire it out for early phase energy modeling, which is a pretty, over a course of 1 to 2 years, putting in 20 to 40 hours of learning is, having been a small firm owner, that is most likely a reasonable thing to consider doing. A medium term length goal could be leading all contractor procurement processes to ensure you've got an aligned team. And that doesn't mean that you are overseeing all the subcontractors, but just being involved in selection of the general contractor. This is a thing that in the commercial and institutional side of things, like large firms don't have this challenge, but small firms, we're not always engaged in that part. Recording early phase energy modeling for all projects and reporting it into the data, into the DDX. This data is imperative to understanding where we're going as an industry. And then integrating the successes into your market, getting those in there, like capitalizing on your successes ASAP. And then within 5 years, you should already have more aligned clients and be in a position to be leading in your community. All right, next slide, please. Some tips for small firms are really helpful. And I just want to acknowledge that without an action plan, like any kind of an action plan towards a goal, implementing new practices, it's like my marathon running program. It's non-existent. It's especially difficult for smaller firms with fewer people and generally smaller budgets to implement these types of things without a plan and a strategy. And towards the end, we'll get into some of those barriers. The most impactful step here is making the commitment and saying what we do or what we want to do, defining it as a team, doing it as a team, because then we can be accountable to one another. And it's all got to be done in a way that you can afford, because it will bring some learning curve. But shifting language, demonstrating values, breaking it down into bite-sized pieces, and treating it maybe not as a perfectionist, but as a progressor will be helpful. Next slide, please. And actually, I'm shifting over to, I think Amy is taking this one on.
Yeah, we were just saying, or Jessica, did you want to speak to the culture shift that varies by firm and market?
Sure, yeah, we were talking a lot when we were putting these slides together about how an important part of any SAP process, but especially at a small firm, is getting everyone on board, which means that you're trying to tailor this effort to whatever your firm is and really understand where your firm is starting and where it needs to go culturally. And so that involves like really looking at what you all do on a day-to-day basis and what would work for you.
And I think this point about we're talking about establishing a baseline of knowledge and values among our team, and there's a huge piece here with change around meeting people where they are, and that is there. From there we can proceed. And so we found it really useful to develop a glossary, so we do have that basic set of terms so everyone understands. EUI, for example, oh, it's like kind of like fuel efficiency for a car, and then different discussion groups. Some firms have done book clubs. We have some discussion groups just around lunchtime.
I think
Yeah, go ahead, Lindsay.
recognizing that the foundation for success is going to be integrating it into your business plan and your business processes. We often think of sustainability as like this add-on, and it always gets value engineered out or whatever. So the more we integrate it, the more we can see it as a best practice and something that can help elevate your company. And the best profitability strategies with any new practice are really for everyone to take ownership. It relieves the burden on the owners and managers, and it's also inherently inclusive. Jessica's going to tell us a little bit more about Fora's work on their SAP and how they're implementing it.
Yeah, thanks. So like I mentioned, we're a pretty small firm, around 10 people, and we started this process. We joined the AIA 2030 commitment in 2022. So if we go to the next slide, our process started out very, very simply. Our first step was just to sign the commitment and establish as a firm with our leadership that this is something we wanted to do. So this did a couple things for us. One is that it helped connect us with a nationwide network of designers who are doing the same thing and see what they're doing. So our second step was to look at peers both similarly sized and doing similar work to us, but also peers that we admire or peers that are really well known in this work, to see what is working and learn from them rather than starting from a blank slate. There's so much great work out there and so many great resources. A lot of the slides today will touch on some of those resources, but looking at what your goals are and finding the resources that speak to you, I think, are really important in this phase. So during this phase, we were just kind of looking around and figuring out how we were going to move forward. And the third phase was probably the most significant. So this step involved us hosting a workshop with our whole team. Like I said, we're 10 people and we're completely remote. So that workshop looks like a virtual workshop on Miro, where we were able to collaboratively develop our sustainability action plan together. So we knew we wanted it to be simple, we needed it to be actionable and true to our values, and we wanted everyone to get on board together. So that meant that all 10 of us could sit in a room or sit in a virtual room and write down what we were interested in and what was important to us and how we could get there as a firm. Started with a lot of brainstorming, and then we were slowly honing and refining with different of our leadership team members to compile that into our very first sustainability action plan. And if you go to the next slide, this is a quick screenshot of what one of the boards in that Miro board looked like during our first workshop, where we were looking at our design process. And so we have all the design phases up here, and we're sticky noting in with all different, everyone is a different color, what they want to see, like what our ideal design process would be. Not necessarily what we do now, not necessarily what we can do tomorrow, but what our ideal process would be, so that from there we can work backwards and develop an actionable plan. Go to the next slide. Developing this sustainability action plan together helped us establish consensus. And out of the very, very messy sticky notes that we compiled, we came up with 4 themes that have kind of grounded and led our sustainability approach. So we are looking at efficient projects that are low energy, low carbon, low water, healthy buildings that are low VOC, provide spaces to connect, play, and connect to nature, place-based solutions that are respectful of resources and draw from local knowledge, and future-proof. This is really important in a lot of our projects, since we work in primarily affordable housing projects, that these are safe spaces for people moving into the future, where we have increased power outages or increased heat waves coming through, and providing spaces that are backed up. Like this space to the right is a community room that is backed up on battery power and solar power, so that it's able to remain a useful and cool space for residents during a heat wave or a power outage. On the next slide, this is the simple format that we came up with. And so this is based on the categories that the AIA provides in their resource Creating a Sustainability Action Plan. And we had the category, we had a quick blurb about what we were currently doing, and then our goals. So what were we going to do in 1 year, 3 year, and 5 years, like Lindsay had laid out. And we did that for each of the 6 categories to just create a very, very simple 6-page, 7-page plan that had everything we were going to do for the next year or a year and so. Next slide. Our initial goals for the first year and the first 3 years were focused on establishing a baseline. So by understanding where we're starting from, we were able to think about laying the groundwork for more aggressive performance goals in the future. Rather than biting off too much, we wanted to make sure we were doing something that we could look back at and really create goals that were actionable. So these goals included things like creating resources and standards, training our team members. So we have a really small team, and our team interacts with, every team member interacts with our clients. So it was really important that all of our team understood where we were coming from and what our goals were. And then key to the AIA 2030 commitment is tracking energy use across our portfolio. So that was looking at the EUI of all of our projects, which was a little bit easier because we do a lot of work based in California, and we were able to work with the energy modelers that were doing some of our Title 24 energy code reporting to move towards that. Next slide. But to speak a little bit more to training and kind of our firm setup, since we are only 10 people, it means everybody has a little bit of a stake in our sustainability and in our climate design. So there's no dedicated sustainability team. We have myself as the building performance lead, but I'm also an architect, and I'm working on projects. I'm helping to manage some projects. And so I'm not able to be there all the time on every project. But we do have sustainability champions that we assign on each project team that could be any one of our team members. And so we put together a series of trainings to bring all of our team up to speed on what they could do as sustainability champions to advocate for and feel empowered to advocate for the sustainability goals on those projects. It included creating a lot of resources like tracking sheets and references so that people knew where to look to just give that information to clients. And this really helps distribute our workload so that no one needs to add all of the sustainability tracking to their plate, and it keeps our entire team fluent and up to date on design performance so that any member of our team can speak to sustainability with our clients. We started this, like I said, 3 years ago in 2022, and this year in 2025, we decided it was time for a revamp. And so we went through the process of learning and updating our sustainability action plan together in another Miro board. This one was looking at the goals that we had developed in that 2022 section and kind of running through them. Like, did we do this? How was it? What can we do next? And who wants to be involved? And this is just an example of what that looked like. Our next slide shows the more holistic kind of like breakdown of our progress over the last 3 years. And so we have in green all of the goals that we were able to meet within the first year and first 3 years, and then in yellow some goals that we are working towards and other goals that we have not yet started. And we're starting to add on to these, looking forward into the future. But this is a way that we were able to develop a sustainability action plan that's not just something that's being submitted to the AIA and sitting on a shelf, but actually something that's, one, informing the work we do and actually realizing benefits when we look back. And so we determined that we met 25 of our 31 goals for the last 3 years. And we've started to realize that these goals are really interconnected. So even though we have the 6 categories laid out here, some of them kind of feed into each other and some interact with some of our other work that's not necessarily 100% sustainability based. And so our next iteration is going to be a little bit more integrated and become part of our strategic plan that's more holistic to our business. Next slide. Because we know that measuring impact really demonstrates our values to our clients, and specific tangible metrics help us to evaluate our performance and share that with others. And so now that we have kind of established our baseline in the first 3 years, created the infrastructure for tracking and reporting through different kind of tracking workflows and training our staff on literacy and understanding the numbers and knowing where to look, we have some more concrete, tangible goals like designing a net zero energy pilot project, tracking and reporting embodied carbon data on a pilot project, and refining our master spec to reduce red list chemicals of concern. So in the next slide, I'll flip through a couple examples real quick of how this is looking in our work. So one of the projects that we're working on right now is being designed as a net zero energy project in the city of San Jose. And this was something where our goals are aligned with trends we see in the industry, and they're contextual. So as the energy codes and funding requirements are getting tighter for our projects, our clients know that they can depend on us to be high performance designers. And so when we have a client who really needs to reach net zero energy on their affordable housing project in order to get the funding that they need, they reached out to us first and could rely on us to deliver that as a project. And so this is now a project designed to be net zero energy and pursuing LEED zero energy through a combination of high performance design, rooftop solar, and a community solar array in the region. Next slide is an example of a project where we looked at embodied carbon. This is a rehabilitation project we did in Colorado. And this is just an example of how our sustainability action plan caused us to lean into low embodied carbon projects and projects that use existing buildings. So things like renovations, rehabs, and reuse. And we are finding that these projects are also in high demand. We have a lot of building stock that needs to be renovated. And so this is a way for us to preserve affordable housing, reduce carbon emissions, and build more quickly in order to reduce construction and operational costs for owners. This was a really quick carbon study that we were able to run using the CARE tool to find that the renovation we did resulted in about the same amount of carbon emissions as doing nothing, and far fewer than if we were to demo and build new the same number of apartments. Next slide. Our last example is working towards healthier and more responsible materials. This is a goal that we had started in 2022, but hadn't made a lot of progress on. And this year, we made 2 large steps, one signing the AIA Materials Pledge, which I highly recommend to all of you as well if you haven't looked into it, which gives advice and guidance on how to support human health, social health, and equity, ecosystem health, climate health, and circular economy through your material selection. And we're working with the Living Future Institute on their Shift to Safer Materials program, which is reducing chemicals of concern in affordable housing. And so through that, we're refining our entire master specification and piloting it on some projects. And so this is a great way to work with other people who are doing similar work, and has also allowed us to really streamline our material selection so that we know what products we like and have a database that we can refer to for that information. Outside of the office, our team is incredibly active in the communities that we live and work in. And as we've expanded our knowledge and experience, we're being recognized as leaders in our field. And so this has resulted in some of the best business development that we've seen. And we just mentioned business development because I think sometimes people can see sustainability as an add-on. And we're really trying to integrate it into our business model so that we're actually using it to create more business and foster community around us. Contributing to advocacy and public policy has also allowed us to do this by continuing to do the work we love while also creating new opportunities for other architects to do so. And so just creating opportunities for more housing means more of us can help build it and get people housed. And the last slide I have today is just a handful of top tips that we've learned and lessons that we've learned as we've been going through this process. Like I said, there's tons of resources available. There's guides, examples. You can join peer communities like the AIA Basecamp. I highly recommend taking advantage of them. Many of the folks in the AIA Basecamp were really crucial and would jump on calls with me when I first started to help develop this process. So I was really grateful for that. Second, really understand where your firm is starting. So what are your firm's unique goals? What are your values, and how can this action plan align with that? 3 is very similar to that. Like, how can you integrate your goals into your current design process and with your current clients? And then bring your whole team in. Everyone has good ideas, and you don't ever know where the good ideas are going to come from. So having everyone in the room means that your plan is going to be as good as possible, and everyone can reinforce those values on all of your projects. Creating this sustainability action plan is just creating another tool for you to use moving forward. So once you have it, use it, and use it as a jumping off point for starting conversations, for providing goals on each project, and for guiding your future firm decisions. Finally, be open to change and identify strategies for catalyzing it. I think we're all learning, and your goals will probably change every time you learn something new about some of these topics. But as you learn, you can update your plan and make it simple to do so that it evolves with you, like your business plan. I think that doing so has helped us discover what our team members are really passionate about, what we're already doing well, and how we can do better. And I think it can do the same as you all move through the process as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amy.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That's great. I am Amy Latvakoko at Studio DSK. We actually just rebranded on Friday. We've been DSK doing Schmidt Kearns Architects Planners for and so very exciting. So new website on Friday, new firm name. So we're an award-winning firm. We're actually 35 people. And so we're a little bit bigger than the AIA technical definition of a small firm. We are architects, planners. We have a great operations support team and interior designers. We design from custom residences, as you see on the screen here, to spaces of higher learning. We have campus and island projects. We have infrastructure projects, water, sewage, pumping stations, and restaurants, and really many different project typologies. Our sustainability action plan is ongoing. We signed the AIA 2030 commitment in 2018. And so that first year, we went ahead and we hadn't reported 2 projects, a single family house on the Cape, and we utilized Revit Insight, where you can use those to calculate our predicted energy use intensity for that house, and a performance center. And once again, we utilized Revit Insight for that. It's an embedded tool within what we had expertise in, and so we're learning from that. Many of our goals are, I know the text there is small, but a lot of our goals are ongoing. So we, working remotely during the pandemic in 2020, we wrote our sustainability action plan. And one of our goals was to have a whole building life cycle analysis on a building. And I'm excited to say that we now are in our second whole building life cycle analysis. And for both of those, we've worked with consultants on those using One Click LCA. But it's been interesting to have that inform our decision making, being able to present an owner with data on embodied carbon versus operational carbon and where to be able to make a decision, for example. This was a roof condition, for example, and they chose to go ahead and add that inch of mineral wool insulation because they have a long-term plan owning that building and wanted to have the increased operational efficiency, although there was a higher embodied carbon impact. So once we had our sustainability action plan, our interior design team said, well, we are going to do one too, specifically materials focused, and they wrote the Healthy Materials Guide, our Healthy Materials Guide in 2022. So our sustainability action plan and materials guide, we did post them when we started our new website on Friday. And we made the links clickable for our resources, and we're just doing some troubleshooting on that, making sure that, because we want this to be a resource that other people can utilize. So I can drop a link in at the end of this when I'm not the one running the screen. This past December 2024, we signed the AIA Architecture and Design Materials Pledge, and we reported for the first time for the Materials Pledge this May. Reported 2 projects. So the basic commitment is to report at the firm level. We reported 2 projects and then 3 products. So that is the optional right now reporting. And we are excited about our 7-year badge for reporting each year. We've been a member of the AIA Materials Pledge. So one of the ways that we implement our SAP is we have a practice group. Sorry, I need that to move the slides along. We have a practice group who run the milestone meetings for each project. And they ask project managers about building performance and what questions are being asked in terms of sustainability. We try to report to the DDX at the end of schematic design development, and construction documents. We have reported during CA, but none of our projects are doing energy modeling during that phase. However, we have been able to have one large project be amenable to collecting electrical data during occupancy, and that has assisted in fine-tuning building operations. And the building is actually now doing better than we had predicted it would. So for the AIA Materials Pledge, that reporting happens when construction documents are complete. And so this spring, we reported on the Materials Pledge for those 2 projects, as I mentioned, but the EUI data that we report March 31st is that reporting annually. For the year prior, we reported, I believe, 22 projects this year. We participate in AIA's continuing education program as a firm provider, which means colleagues can do a course proposal, research it, develop a course, get it approved by the AIA, and present it. We call it DSKU. And it's great for staff to practice their presentation skills. And many of those have been on materials, building performance, resiliency, coastal design, and circular economy. These have all contributed then, here's on this page where it talks about human health, social health, and equity, ecosystem health, and climate health, and circular economy. Each of those, we were able to then build a case to sign the Materials Pledge in December. We also have a social and racial discussion group and looking at the impact of design and construction, and that group did some work that also contributed to making the decision to sign on to that. So people and planet is what we design for, of course. As architects, we're designing the spaces that people are going to be in, but we are also looking at the impact, of course, of our designs on the site and at the impact of our building materials as they and at the end of life of our buildings. So our social and racial discussion group looked at supply chains and learned about social life cycle analysis. And they also, we learned about the impact of plastics in construction and the impact on fence line communities, in particular in Louisiana. And together we're learning up environmental justice communities. So, and we're seeking just certification. So. I will just say, because this is a small firm, I just wanted to say one way that you can report if you're signing on to 2030 is you can use your HERS certificate you can take this number here that I'm circling, the 91.5 is the expected energy use per year of a mega BTU. So you take that number, and if you multiply that by 1,000, then your units are gonna you're gonna divide by 1,000, you're gonna multiply by 1,000 to convert from mega BTU to kilobTU. And then you just, on the certificate, you have your square footage, which you provided them with, that's your conditioned floor area. And by dividing that, you can get your predicted energy use intensity. So the HERS modeler is using Ecotrope, which is modeling that over 24 hours over time. So for us, this is a way that we have a really effective code compliance strategy. We're working closely with the HERS raters, and they're very cost effective and knowledgeable. So this is one way with that a small firm might want to approach. Okay, well, we can report what we have from our HERS certificates. Another way that working on residences is, of course, selecting local natural materials. Often maybe they have fewer certifications, maybe they're not, cradle to cradle certified, things like that, but they're locally made, and often maybe you're using linens and wool carpets and things like that. And sometimes we've had client-driven goals, such as we had one client who said there will be no tropical hardwoods on this project, and that it's a delight when you have that kind of mandate from a client to then go and push that. And then we also, within a residence, can focus on experience. Say we are looking at the overall building performance and we have large glazed openings, we can focus on improved acoustics, thermal comfort, and increased better furnishing, perhaps closer to a window. So we have our resources here. Just going to click through that page. One of my colleagues did a bingo for Materials Pledge, and that was fun for one of our projects where all sorts of, this is a news cafe down on the south coast, south of Boston. They didn't want bulk dispensers. We designed custom bulk dispensers for them and various other aspects in the building. And just the reason for the DDX is that what gets measured gets managed. And so by having that data, having that benchmark information, we can move forward and learn from as we proceed. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Lindsay. Oh, you're on mute, Lindsay.
Sorry about that. Thank you, both Jessica and Amy. Such incredible examples. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. I want to talk a little bit, just to transition into barriers, to share my experience as a co-founder of Love Shack. We are in the Rocky Mountain region, as I've noticed some of you are on the call today, which is awesome to see you here. We wanted to start a firm that was operating based on sustainable principles. We had both worked for others, Lindsay Shack and I, and no one else in the region or the market was really doing it, especially in residential construction. So we decided to start a firm together with a business plan that was based on sustainability. We baked the values into the language. We had a plan for profitability, but it didn't necessarily get into the specifics of what skills or processes would be needed, and or how our contracts would accommodate the work or our learning curve. We had expertise in concepts and principles and tools, but not necessarily in implementation at that time. we improved over the years. We learned that we needed to change how we spoke about these things, and it's not just, it is beyond a framing of or reframing of not using polarized words to a realization that our clients want this from us. Doesn't matter their political party. And they expect us to be their advocate and teacher, both around all the things: performance, metrics, a calibrated building, healthy, maybe rather instead of using the word sustainable. We used certifications, fraught as they were. They honestly, we didn't know what a sustainability action plan was at that time. As most of you in the Rocky Mountains know, we're a little bit behind what's going on culturally on the coasts. But we use certifications as our resources and our guides and our unifiers, going so far as to work with contractors who were trained in the same certifications as we were. And once we figured this out, that we were far more successful. Later, we began to incorporate these steps into our regular design processes, as you've seen Amy and Jessica explain that they've done in their firms. And then eventually we're able to capitalize on those successes. And not just improve, but take on new challenges. And honestly, framing or forming regenerative building solutions kind of came out of that, wanting to take on the challenges of materials. Next slide, please. Okay. So a few of the challenges, I'm going to kind of speed through these in the next few minutes so we have time for Q&A. What I often hear is that our clients don't value it, at least not enough to pay a little bit of upfront cost. And so our job as the architect and as our client's advocate is to realize that it's not about politics. It really is about health. It's about comfort. It's about design for humans, and learning how to convey that value is our job. And another thing I want to acknowledge is that your time and your career is just as valuable as your client's money. So how do you want to spend it? How do you want to spend your one opportunity, your lifetime of developing your career? I guess taking ownership of operating with your values and your integrity. And then messaging and ownership, messaging and conveying the value of this is really going to lead to finding those more aligned clients. Next slide, please. It always gets value engineered out is one of the next barriers that I hear firms share as a challenge. And I wanted to talk quickly about this little example that I did with Love Shack and Sharon Davis Design and Building Bureau on a 20,000 square foot institutional dormitory building in Montana. Originally, the client came to us with an interest in using hempcrete, and as you all know, as you get through the process, budgets and constraints come into play. Having contractors, qualified contractors comes into play. And so we kind of started early on in the project with building in these value engineering options, like within SD or like shortly after SD. We compared and contrasted different assemblies and did the cost benefit analyses, including benefits such as health, available contractors, etc., availability of the materials, and operational costs. One of the key tools here is realizing that your HVAC system really needs to be paired with the building envelope. If you separate those two things, it's kind of doing a disservice to your client if they are going to own the building for more than 5 years. Anyway, so we baked into the options, the value engineering options, solutions that still met goals and values. But it's true, compromises are going to happen. And so I just want to highlight that, like, we're working towards progress, not necessarily perfection. Okay, next slide, please. Another one that I hear often is that the cost of learning curve is too high. And it's very true, like for small firms, any learning curve is a trick. It's pretty challenging to take those on. We're just struggling with retaining employees and all the other things that we do. So I want to highlight that a sustainability action plan is like any other action plan. It should absolutely support your strategies for increasing profitability. And nothing that we've learned about today or within the guideline is going to contradict, like this graphic I pulled from some random profitability consulting company. We're focusing on increasing your scope and increasing your expertise, aligning with high value and highly aligned clients through messaging, improving your products and services, improving your efficiency, elevating your design, and investing in your team. Next slide, please. I hear from some firms that good design is the pinnacle of sustainability, or that it is enough. And I would completely agree with that, and want to acknowledge that it's subjective. Nowadays, we have so much more data about the impacts of construction than we did 100 years ago on pollution, social equity, operational costs, and especially now in a changing climate, life safety, as grids and infrastructure are less reliable. As members of AIA, I would argue that we ought to be considering the framework for design excellence and building our businesses based on it. These things are absolutely the foundation of strength, utility, and beauty. They are not contradictory to it. They might be a bit more complex is all. Next slide. And then this is the last barrier, that contractors just don't do it. And this is really a challenge within the residential sector, primarily because we have different types of contracts and we don't often write specifications. But I would argue that if the market is not in a substantial downturn, you probably do have an ability to only work with clients, first of all, who let you choose the contractor, or at least be involved in that. And then a step beyond that is you may actually have an opportunity to only work with contractors who are aligned and educated. This is one of the biggest barriers. But then if you really can't work with a contractor that you've chosen, or even if you can, but maybe they don't have exactly the same training as you, you can use a metric or a certification kind of as a third party or neutral bad cop. And then having an aligned client is critical often, and sometimes the client has to drive it and be that self-advocate for themselves with your backing and expertise. Okay, and this is our last slide. Just some lessons that we have collectively learned over the years. Saying it is maybe the first and most important step. Saying what you know, it's probably more than others in the room. It's going to lead to iterative change throughout your firm and down the line. And you have to say it. You have to make the commitment in order to do the thing, whether it's running a marathon or implementing better practices.
And then we found that we can question the barrier, whether the barrier is perceived and real. And so much of these items are things that hold us back, can be cultural, psychological, and can be shifted. And so being present in the room and when to let the answer no be the start of a conversation to find out why has been really effective. And we can look at ourselves and where are we holding ourselves back.
Yeah, and then finally we'll close with something that's been mentioned a lot, but that your client is looking to you as their advocate. And when we do the work, we are experts in the work that we do. And so when we are designing great buildings, we would like to also have them be great sustainable buildings. And this is another like feather in your hat of being an expert, another thing that you can pull from as being an expert in sustainable design. So when you talk to your clients or when you talk to your teams, talk about design holistically with sustainability integrated into it, and also think of your client or the project as the hero as you're talking about your messaging and as you're working with them to incorporate some of your goals. Is how can this goal that you have improve the project and improve their outlook and give them a better product down the line. So with that, I think that's the end of our slides, and we have a few minutes left for questions. I see a few in the Q&A here. I see one specifically for Amy. So Amy, I don't know if you want to start with this one. Someone is asking what the process is to get an AIA accredited course.
Yeah, so you join as a firm provider, and I think it might be $495 a year, so it is an expense. But then you you develop a course, and then you submit that to the AIA. You don't submit your slides, you submit what the learning objectives are and summary, and whether you're submitting for health, safety, welfare. And they review it, and they may come back with edits, or they may not approve it, or they may say, oh, you're asking for 1.5 credits, and no, this is only 1.0 credits worth, or something like that. And then once it's approved, that approval lasts for 3 years, and you submit, then the course expires. And so if you then have an in-class presentation, like say at the firm, or you could do it remotely, you then, when that is held, people do a sign-in sheet, you keep that sign-in sheet for 7 years. And you then submit, you make certificates for people who need them, we have a bunch of architects who are just state registered, and those for AIA, you report that directly to the AIA, you report that session.
Thanks, Amy. I see a question. Does the AIA 2030 commitment have any process for actual post-evaluation of projects to measure how well projects have performed relative to modeled data? And Ina might be able to chime in, but for now, what I know is not really, where you just submit your design data, your predicted energy use intensity, and then if you are able to record data down the line, that's really helpful for your own process and for checking your models, but we haven't it's not required to submit to the AIA 2030 commitment. It's not, but we have. And just when a client, and we will ask people if they're willing to share their data, because we do learn from it. And so it is nice if it happens, if you have an ongoing relationship with them through post-occupancy. Maybe you're doing an indoor air quality evaluation, and so maybe you can also see how those metrics are going. So it helped us with some fine tuning also, separately from the building commissioning work. So if you can, I think it's great. I don't think that DDX has a phase right now. Yeah, it has. We're able to.
There is a opportunity to input a single number, but is not nearly as intuitive as the 5 design phases. I will note that it is on the docket in terms of DDX updates. Not necessarily by the end of this year, but within this upcoming year, to link the DDX with the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, pending the existence of Energy Star Portfolio Manager when the time comes. But that sync will require some a lift on project teams to kind of go back and ensure that their clients are allowing that data to come through, but there should be, hopefully, fingers crossed, within this next year, a sync between those 2 platforms. So the design data and the actual post-occupancy data will be able to flow a bit more freely.
Thanks, Ina. The last question, we have a minute or so left. So if any folks want to chime in on what extent you've included practices and methods into our SAP. This person mentions design, materials, carbon footprint, resilient materials and high fire areas, etc. And should they include these in their SAP? I would say yes, if that's a goal, if those are goals that you have and actions that you'd like to take, I think it's important to include. But there are tons of examples online that you can look to as well. Lindsay, do you have any input?
I would echo that if that's like, it looks like you might be rebuilding in fire prone areas or places that have had recent fires. And that sounds like it likely would be of high value for your firm. So I would strongly recommend it. But take it on in bite-size pieces. Like maybe you're not trying to execute the whole thing at once, but like step by step, like what are the processes? And those can be specific to your own firm and what makes sense to you.
That's all the questions I see. Amy, any other additions before we wrap up?
Thanks everyone for coming. This has been great. Thanks Ina for organizing. Thanks Lindsay and Jessica. It's great.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. I think all of us, I'll speak for all of us, but I think you can reach out to us if you have any other questions. So if anything comes up, feel free to shoot us an email and we can chat.
Wonderful. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, panelists.
Thanks everyone.